Brilliant. So that's a little video for something called Dad Camp. With one of my hats, I work for an organisation called Belfast YMCA, and we work with thousands of children and young people across the city every year. And one of our partnerships is with Crown Jesus Ministries. And every year for the last 4 or 5 years, we've been running a 24-hour event called Dad Camp, and it's in August, 14th to 15th, starts on a Friday night and runs through to a Saturday night. It costs £45 per adult and £45 per child. It's for 18 to 14-year-olds. And if cost is a challenge, we have a bursary available as well, because we don't want that to be a barrier. I've been the last number of years, firstly with Lydia, our eldest, and then the last few years with Jacob. And it's just been an amazing, as you can see from the video, 24 hours, where as a father I've been able to spend time having loads of fun, high energy, but also moments where it's just me and either Jacob or Lydia, and being able just to spend time with them and really go deeper. So if you're a father in the room, you've got a child between the age of 18 and 14, I've got a couple of wee leaflets today actually as well. We would really encourage you. It'd be wonderful actually for a group of us from Willowfield to go along to Dad Camp this year. There's around 100 people or so that attend that. So that's what that little video was. But jumping kind of sideways then, we want to just do a little bit of a conversation this morning. So I've got John, that I think everybody will know as our evangelist here in Willowfield, and Simon, thank you for sharing with us. I've got a question for both of you and then one individually for each of you. Who's got the mic? John, you're going first, great. So John, thinking about from where you sit in church, in the role that you play in the community here, what do you notice when a young person doesn't maybe have that positive father figure in their lives?
Yeah, well, thankfully, I think in church, most of the kids who come to church would have both their parents in their lives, but sadly that's not the case for most of the kids out in the community. And the Lost Boys report, which was released last year, confirmed what we already knew, that there is an epidemic of absent fathers. And it has a huge effect on young people. I read a book a couple of years ago called The Boy Crisis, and I just wrote down just a few of the points that stood out to me from that report, or from that book. And it says, by P4, boys whose fathers were present scored higher in every achievement test and received higher grades. 71% of high school dropouts have minimal or no father involvement. Boys deprived from their dads are more likely to be unemployed. Living in a home without a dad is linked with suicide among children more than any other factor. A father's involvement is at least 5 times more important in preventing drug use, and 90% of runaways and homeless youths are for fatherless homes. So I don't work with kids, I work with men. I say from 18 plus I would work. And what I find is a lot of the men that I work with who would be struggling with mental health and addictions all have, most of them, 95% of them would have one thing in common, and they had no father figure in their lives growing up. So it has a huge effect.
So you've painted what is a challenging picture really for us, that actually when fathers are not present in the home, educationally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, every aspect of their lives, and then it impacts them as men as well. Simon, what about for you from your position? Kind of, we've heard some of that maybe educationally, but you'll be seeing it day in, day out.
Yeah, we do. And you know, it's really, really stark. For us in school, we have got, I suppose, 2 or 3 ways the children present. Some are going to be the very much, notice me, hello, I'm in your face, I want your validation, I want your attention, how are you? And there's a lot of walls to get through with that, because they're using their wee personality and their wee character as a shield. We then find there's the 1,000-yard stare, and we have particularly boys who are self-sufficient. I'm all right. There's men in my community I can talk to. I know Jimmy from the shop, and I know this one, and I know that one. But they don't have relationships. They don't have connection. They don't have real men to speak into their lives and have those conversations. They'll be the ones that mooch about in their bike, and they'll be cycling around, keeping their distance, always on the edge of the group, always looking around. And they're the ones that will go, nope, nobody loves me. Nobody cares about me. Why am I important? What's wrong? And those are the wee ones that really need school and really need the community of school. I have a wee lad who, in my time, has left, and oh my goodness, raker, absolute raker. but put me through the mill, put me through the motions, loved him to bits, and then at the end of the year, tidying up, and had come to Breakfast Club one day, didn't really come to Breakfast Club, and had the colouring pages out, and basically said, "I love Nettlefield. It's the greatest school in the world." Signed their name and left it in among just the scrap paper. That it was only when we were tidying up we found it. I was like, oh, there we go. There is some hope. There is some joy as to what we do. And it really did get me. But the one thing I've written as well is that, despite seeing children present like that, either on the edges or the notice me, or under the radar, we work really hard with a nurture program. And Transform Ed is coming. And Transform Ed this week, we're starting to look at behaviour. What's the behaviour policy? Is it zero tolerance? Is it this what we're going to do? Here's the hard yards. You've done wrong. You've got to pay it back. But you know what? There's a lot to be said for nurture. And that's not pussyfooting. That's not romanticising. That's not airy-fairy. Nurture is boundaries. Nurture is clarity. And our kids that don't have a father figure need clarity and boundaries and structure and routine. Done in love. Done absolutely with the right heart, not to be punitive. But I think actually what we also see are grandparents. And I just want to acknowledge grandparents today, because in our cycle, we see kids grow up without a daddy, but there's a grandparent that knows, oh my goodness, we weren't there for my child, therefore I don't want that to miss out. And hindsight's 2020. We see grandparents catching up that slack now, and we see this cycle coming through. So I just thank God for grandparents that are trying to bridge that gap as well.
Brilliant. It just strikes me, as you said earlier, I guess you encouraged and challenged us to get around Nettlefield.
Yeah.
There's definitely a way for all of us in the room, but for men, and whether you're a father or not, they play a role there, actually. So there's a thought. John, slightly different question for you. What's the best piece of fathering advice you've either been given or given someone else?
Well, there's a group of us men at the minute are doing a course called Every Man a Warrior, and we meet on Saturday mornings. We're on book 2 at the minute, and we're actually working our way through what it means to be a godly father. And the biblical principles that are laid down are, and it's a father's God-given responsibility to train his children. Children get their self-image from what they believe their fathers think about them, and the words spoken over a child will determine his or her own destiny. And there's just a wee part. So God takes fatherhood very, very seriously, and he's laid down a lot of instruction and directions for us in the Bible and how we go about that. But one of the wee paragraphs from that book really stood out to me, and it says, "Don't make it your goal that your kids have more possessions or have it easier than you did. Make it your goal that your children excel in character, are more secure in who they are equipped to walk with God, and better prepared for life than you were. Ask God for the grace to train them well, so that you too can say, 'My children are better than I was.'"
There's a theme through both of what you've said around that nurture, that support, that encouragement. Too often we want to control or want to kind of be in charge as fathers, even, or kind of have it the way we think is best. But actually it's when we step back, as you've said, and we are not at the front, but actually the nurturing, the support, the encouragement. Thank you both. Really appreciate that. Give these guys a round of applause. Thank you. Can I ask you something before I properly begin? What did your dad give you that you didn't fully know you needed at the time? Think about that. What did your dad maybe give you that you didn't fully know you needed at the time? Maybe it was something he said, something he did, the fact that he showed up. Or maybe for some of you it's the absence of some of those things, as we've heard just now. And hold that thought. We'll come back to it a little later on. I lost my dad on the 13th of June 2020, 6 years ago this month. And Dad was 63 years old. He had motor neurone disease. There's a couple of photos actually on the next slide that kind of show those latter years as well. And I'll be honest, those final 18 months that he was diagnosed, it was quick. It was difficult. We were caring for someone, our dad, as he lost his voice, as he lost his movement, his independence. It stays with you. But when I think about Dad and his Father's Day comes around, as it does every year, when I think about caring for him over that past year, grief isn't the first thing that comes to mind. Actually, what comes to mind is gratitude. Gratitude for watching his faith endure through illness, his love for us and for my mum when everything was being stripped away. A horrible illness. You find out what someone is really made of in those moments when they rely on their family to care for them. Gratitude because I had a good father. Not a perfect one, but a loving dad, a present, faithful, kind, honest father. One thing he modeled so well was just how he loved mum and their marriage and relationship. He loved us 5 children. I don't know how he had 5. And grandkids, there's now 13. Is that right? I think 13, maybe 14. I've lost count. And he didn't meet them all, as some have been born over the last couple of years. But just seeing him as a father and grandfather. One of the seasons that I guess I'm most thankful for and why I think of gratitude is that I got to work alongside my dad for a couple of years. After he retired from teaching, he got involved as a volunteer with Christians Against Poverty, where I was working at that stage. And being able to see Dad not just as a father, someone I could say, Dad, can I borrow money from you? But maybe as a partner in ministry in that season, watching him give his time, serving others, drawing alongside people who were struggling, just brought a different dynamic to our relationship. And it was some of the best years, and it was those final years before he then got ill. And that has shaped me as a father as well. So fast forward to today. I'm married to Deborah. We have 3 kids, Lydia, who's 12, Jacob, who's 10, and Martha, who's 7. And let's be honest, fatherhood has a way of exposing you. I get angry all the time. If you live close to us, and some people do, please don't tell the others when you hear me shouting down the garden for the 10th time, would you please come in? I get frustrated. I'm grumpy. And it has this way of exposing you. You know, I've said sorry to my kids more times. Peggy's smiling at me. She's probably heard me shouting down the garden. And I say sorry so often, actually, is the reality as a father. And there's a gap between the father I want to be and the expectation I maybe hold on myself, and yet the father who I often am when I get it wrong. When I'm tired after a day's work. When all one of my kids wants is my attention, but I'm focused elsewhere. Which means I'm not coming this morning to this topic to speak as someone who's got it all together. Far from it. Far from it. Because fatherhood isn't always simple. Father's Day, as Clive has alluded to earlier, it's not that simple. And for some of you today, it is a real joy. You've had your chocolate orange, your coffee. You'll get pampered and treated well, I hope. That's a hint to the mothers in the room. For others, it's complicated. It's painful. Today will not be so easy. And all of that is true and welcome here this morning. I want to take a look together then at Luke 15, the parable of the prodigal son. And you kind of think, what's that got to do with fatherhood? Well, actually, it's a really good way for us to look at what a good father actually is. And Jesus answers that question, you know, what is a good father through this story? And in this story, at the heart of this, is a story of a father. So let's read some of the verses and weave our way through it. Luke 15, verses 11 to 13. First, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me a share of the estate. Give me my share of the estate. So the father divided the property between them, and not long after that, the younger son got together all he had. He set off to a distant country, and there he squandered his wealth in wild living. In that culture, a son asking for their inheritance early was essentially saying, I wish you were dead, Dad. You don't matter to me. He takes the money, he leaves home, he wastes everything until this son finds himself with nothing. He was broken, he was ashamed, he was hungry, and he decides he's got nothing better to do than to return home. But in his mind, he was not going to return home as a son. He's given up on that. He's realized he's made a terrible mistake. So in his mind, he thinks, I'm going to return as a servant, expecting rejection, expecting distance from his father. But Jesus says something in verse 20 that stops the audience cold. It says this: while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him, and he ran to his son. He threw his arms around him and he kissed him. He ran to his son. Dignified men in that culture did not run to their sons, their children. Fathers didn't run. What this son had done to his father and shamed him, society would not have expected this response, but this father does. He moves towards his son before his son can even get out that speech to say, please take me back as a servant. And what he does next is even more extraordinary, verses 22 and 24. But the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet, bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate, for this son of mine was dead, and now he's alive again. He was lost and he was found. A robe gave dignity. A ring provided identity, and sandals gave belonging. The son who came back expecting to be a servant is welcomed home as a son. So what does this show us about our Father God? What does this story tell us in the Father's response to the prodigal son? I believe it's the kind of God that Father God is. He's not distant. He's not waiting for us to sort our lives out. He's not holding us at arm's length until we've earned our way back and paid penance. He's a father who sees us a long way off. And he runs. He runs to us. And I say, knowing this, that picture for some of us will be hard to receive. Maybe the father you experienced didn't look like that there were gaps. There's maybe still gaps. But here's what I've come to believe. God just doesn't fill the gaps left by our earthly fathers. He redefines fatherhood altogether. And that question I asked at the start, what did your father give you that you didn't fully realize you needed at the time? Do you know, whatever your answer, God offers something bigger and greater than that. Firstly, he offers us his presence. And then his compassion, and then his restoration. So whatever our experience of fatherhood now or in the past, this is an invitation this morning to know God as your Father. And as we've heard also from Simon and John, there's a bigger picture, isn't there? This story doesn't just show us what God is like. It shows us what we're called to be as fathers and father figures in the church. Look again at this father. He lets his son choose. He actually allows him to take the inheritance. He could have said no. He could have said, no, I'm not letting you do that. But he does let his son choose. Sometimes as fathers and mothers, we have to let our children choose, even though we know the choices they're making are not always the best. Secondly, he runs towards brokenness rather than away from us. Sometimes what we see, maybe in our children or those around us, we kind of want to run away from that situation as a father, but actually this father runs towards brokenness. And thirdly, he restores identity instead of reinforcing shame. How often do the words we use actually reinforce the shame of the mistake our children make rather than restoring identity? You see, God restores identity, and that's a completely different picture of fatherhood that many people will have experienced, and it's what our world needs right now. It's what this community around us needs. Ephesians 6 verse 4 puts it like this: fathers, do not exasperate your children, and I know I do often, but instead bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. Don't crush them. Simon used this phrase earlier, nurture them, guide them, love them, coach them. Our children don't need perfect fathers, but they do need present ones. Our children don't need perfect fathers, but they do need present ones. And presence doesn't have to be dramatic. Do you know, it's being at the dinner table. It's putting the phone down and away and switching off from whatever you're thinking about. It's saying sorry when you get it wrong. Modeling humility and grace. So maybe this 1 week for fathers in the room, you might take one of those things. You might choose to, I'm going to try to be more present. I'm going to make sure I'm focused and spending time with my children, even playing with them and doing the things they want to do. This week, it might be you just need to apologize for something that you've got wrong. And the difference that makes is quite extraordinary. We touched a little bit upon this earlier, but we kind of think about the community in which we're surrounded and the city in which we live. And this message isn't just for dads today, even though it's focused on that. Around 1 in 4 children in Northern Ireland will grow up without a father in the home. And actually within urban areas of the city and cities across Northern Ireland, that rises to 4 in 10, 40% of young people in homes around here are likely to grow up without a father. And in that gap, again, as we've heard from Simon and John, young people will search in different places. As we saw through the recent riots, young people will search in different places. And they're seeking to be seen. They're seeking for someone to say that you have a future, that you matter, that I see you. And maybe for some of those children, actually that's the challenge. But this father in Luke 15, interestingly, doesn't stay inside the house. And as a church, we think of this even as a house. Should we just stay inside these walls and do great work here? No. That's why WPCA and the work of this church extends broader than just these 4 walls and our hall across the road. Because the Father goes out. He runs towards his Son. He creates that belonging and forgiveness. And that's our call as a church as well, to be a community where people find spiritual fathers, spiritual mothers, where people, young people and children are seen, they're known, they're guided, they're believed in, they're supported, they're walked alongside. And so many of you already do that. You'll be doing that this next week through the Rise Bible Holiday Club. You'll be doing that as you serve through kids and youth ministries. But can I also challenge and encourage you, and myself, let's get behind the ministries of this church and WPCA. Let's get involved where we can give a little bit of time and actually be and step into the gap that society leaves. I want to finish where we started. You know, my dad was brilliant, but he wasn't perfect. I remember the countless times he would come home grumpy. Reminds me then when I am as well. And he was a teacher, so actually you'd see this kind of, usually when the summer holidays came, Dad just relaxed. And it was like a different dad, because teaching was, and still is, very stressful. But Dad was present. Dad was faithful. He was honest. He was kind. It was not about a performance or perfection. And that presence that he gave us as a gift, it's the greatest gift that we can give our children. And that's the image of the heart of this story of Luke 15. A father running, not waiting for his son to clean himself up, to get everything right, running towards him with compassion, with grace, with love. And you know, when I watched my own dad through those 18 months 6 years ago, through that illness that ripped everything away, how he still smiled, how he still, when he could, laughed, how you could see in his eyes that he was still there with us. I saw something of that grace, a picture of what it means to stay, to be present, even when his body was giving up on him. Do you know God's heart for us this morning? Whether you're full of gratitude, like I am on Father's Day, whether your dad has handed you great things and you can look up and think, wow, how privileged am I? Or if today is painful, and actually your story's not been one that you have found very easy. If you're a father or a father figure hear this and this story and this picture of a father who runs to us, not as a pressure, but as a freedom. We don't have to be perfect fathers. You just have to show up. So this morning, the invitation is, let the Father God who runs towards you reach you. Stop trying to get your act together. Stop thinking you need to be further along before you can meet God. He's already running towards you. Thank you. I think the worship band are going to come up again now. Clive's looking at me going, are you done? Told you to be on time.